AITA for my reaction when my wife and the stepdaughter I raised called me an embarrassment. I had always known that I was not her real dad. That was not new. But knowing it and hearing it out loud, hearing it loaded with disgust, delivered with such contempt, were two completely different things. I was sitting quietly in the back row of the auditorium at her high school, watching her on stage during the winter choir concert. She was leading the choir, proud and polished. And for a second, I smiled like I always did when I saw her succeed. Then she saw me. Her face tightened. She looked away. Afterward, I walked up to her to tell her how proud I was. That was when she dropped it on me. Can you stop coming to my school stuff? You are not my real dad, and I do not like people thinking we are related. Without hesitation, without shame, just those cold, sharp words I never thought I would hear from the little girl I raised. The hallway was buzzing with parents and students, but I swear everything went silent after she said it. Her voice did not even tremble. My mouth stayed slightly open, and my hand was still holding the bouquet of flowers I had brought her. White lilies, her favorites, or at least they used to be. I looked at her mother, hoping she would say something, correct our daughter, remind her that I was the one who had held her during her nightmares, who had taught her how to ride a bike, who stayed awake helping her with math when her teachers gave up. But my wife just crossed her arms and said, "She is right. Do not embarrass my daughter like that. You can have your own child if you want someone to cheer for." She seemed annoyed, as if I had caused a scene when all I had done was show up. I did not answer. I just smiled. A very quiet, very bitter smile because she had no idea that yes, I did have a child, a daughter, and she was on her way. I do not think I slept that night. I stayed on the couch downstairs, awake, staring at the ceiling while the ceiling fan spun uselessly. My mind played that moment on a loop. Her voice, the angle of her chin, the way those words had the same force as a door closing forever. 14 years. 14 years of diapers, dentist appointments, scraped knees, and heartbreaks. 14 years of showing up when her real dad did not. Paying for dance lessons and taking days off to see her recitals. I never tried to replace her dad. I just wanted to be there. And now it all boiled down to one sentence. You are not my real dad. No matter how much I thought about it, it hurt. But beneath the pain, something else began to burn, a slow, steady clarity. I was not going to beg to be part of a family that threw me away like a piece of furniture they no longer needed. At 6 a.m, I made the call. It was not dramatic, just a steady, simple voicemail. "Mia, it is time. Pack your bags. I am picking you up." She knew what that meant. We had talked about it many times over the years, always in theory. I had kept my distance out of respect for her mother's boundaries, to avoid confusion, but she was my daughter, my blood. And although I kept quiet for peace, I was done sacrificing myself to keep the illusion of a family intact. My home had become a house full of strangers. When I arrived at the bus station that morning, she was there. She was older now, taller than the last time I had seen her. Her hair was tied in that signature ponytail I remembered from her childhood. She looked a lot like her mother, but her eyes were all mine, bright, observant, and quietly tired. She did not ask any questions. She just got in the car, put her bag in the back seat, and said, "Let us go home." I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, let us go home." For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone actually wanted me there. When we arrived at our suburban home, she was still quiet. My wife and stepdaughter were probably still asleep, assuming I was somewhere licking my wounds. Mia followed me inside, dragging her suitcase. I did not even try to walk quietly. I made noise on purpose. Keys clinking, doors slamming. In less than 10 minutes, both of them appeared at the top of the stairs. My wife blinked as if she were seeing a ghost. My stepdaughter looked at her with a scowl. "Who is she?" the latter asked. I said calmly, "This is my daughter." You could have heard a pin drop. My wife's voice was the first to break. "Wait. What? What do you mean your daughter?" Mia just gave a little wave and kept rolling her suitcase toward the guest room. My wife's eyes narrowed. "Why is she here?" I slowly turned to her. "Because unlike you two, she never made me feel like a stranger in my own home." The words fell heavily. My wife followed me into the kitchen, trying to lower her voice. "This is ridiculous. You cannot just bring someone to live here without consulting me first." I opened the drawer, pulled out the folder with the household account information, and started destroying her access documents one by one. Cards, online banking, car payments, everything. You do not have to worry about this house anymore. You have 3 days to pack your bags and leave. She looked like she had been slapped. You are kicking us out after everything we have been through. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I just said, you made it perfectly clear that I did not belong. I am simply returning the favor. That night, sitting with Mia watching a movie she had picked, the house felt different, unfamiliar, but quiet in a way I had not felt in years. She leaned against me and whispered, I am sorry she hurt you like that. I did not answer right away. I just kept watching the screen, feeling the warmth of someone who saw me. Truly saw me for the first time in a long time. And when the credits rolled, I realized I was no longer angry. I was just done. The next morning, my wife burst into my office with her phone in hand. I will drag you to court, she said. You think you can kick us out and leave us with nothing? I did not even look up. You can try, but everything I have, this house, my business, my savings, are in Mia's name. Her face went pale, and I knew then that the real battle had just begun. She stood there frozen, gripping the phone as if it would save her from the disaster she had not seen coming. The words, in Mia's name, rang in the air like an endless bell. I did not repeat anything. It was not necessary. Everything she thought she controlled, every purchase, every renovation, every card she swiped without ever saying thank you, no longer existed. I had planned the transfer for years, building my exit in silence, not out of malice, but out of survival. I knew that one day, I would need a way out. I just did not know the reason would be so cruel or so clear. She blinked rapidly, her voice dry and cracked. That is illegal. That has to be illegal. I slowly stood up from the chair, not angry, just done. No, what is illegal is using someone's love like a vending machine and throwing it away when you have emptied it. But go ahead, call your lawyer. Barely out of the office, the air in the house felt different. I could feel her rage vibrating in the walls like static electricity. But I did not care. I found Mia in the kitchen, barefoot, pouring herself some juice. Calm, too calm for a teenager thrown into the middle of a storm. But she was different. Her mother had raised her tough, and life had made her even tougher. She looked up and asked, how did it go? I laughed softly. Just as you expected. Shock, denial, threats of court. She nodded as if she had already seen this movie. She is not going to take it well. I watched her for a moment. Are you sure you are okay with all this? I did not ease you into it. She put the glass down and leaned against the counter, eyes steady. I am not here for peace, Dad. I am here for you. That hit me harder than I expected. I was not used to someone choosing me. For years, I had given everything to a family that never asked how I was doing. I was the provider, the silent fixer, the emotional buffer. When my stepdaughter cried, I was there. When my wife wanted to redecorate for the 3rd time in 2 years, I was there with an open wallet, but no one ever asked if I wanted to be there. They just assumed I did because I always showed up. But now Mia, this girl whose existence they ignored, was in my kitchen saying, I choose you. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. By noon, the silence in the house had turned cold. My wife barely came out of the bedroom, and when she did, it was with narrowed eyes and loud grunts. My stepdaughter, on the other hand, was furious. She slammed doors, muttered under her breath, walked around like she was the victim of a massive injustice. At one point, she even had the audacity to say, you are ruining my life. I did not even answer. I just looked at her, not with anger, but with a sadness I had not felt in a long time. This was the little girl I had held in my arms when she broke her arm, the one who once called me Dad with the sweetest voice you could imagine. And now she looked at me like I was the enemy. But I was not ruining her life. I had just stopped funding her disrespect. That same afternoon, Mia helped me change the locks on our suburban home. She held the tools as if she had been waiting for this moment her whole life. And maybe, in a way, she had. What was she like? She asked, tightening a screw. Your wife, I mean, before all this. I had to pause. She was grateful, or at least she played the part. She used to thank me for everything, and somewhere along the way, gratitude turned into entitlement. She nodded, not with judgment, but with understanding. My mom was the same with her second husband. It took the divorce for her to realize how much she depended on him. I sighed. The dependency is not the problem. It is the disrespect that comes with it. That night, we made pasta together. Nothing fancy, just something warm, something real. The kitchen, which used to be full of silence and fake politeness, now vibrated with laughter and stories. Mia told me about her college plans, her job at a local bookstore, her favorite music. She loved old-school R&B, the kind I used to play in my car when she was a baby. "I know the lyrics," she said with a soft smile. "I did not know you were listening," I replied, surprised. "I was always listening," she answered, and there was that quiet truth again. She had watched, listened, waited for the moment when we could be a family again, and now we were. The next morning, a black Audi pulled into the driveway. My wife had called her sister. Reinforcements. She got to the front door, furious, her mouth full of accusations. "You have gone crazy. You are kicking out your own family for a girl from out of nowhere." Before I could answer, Mia took a step forward. "I am not from out of nowhere. I am from his past, and unlike you, I never forgot him." Her voice was calm, but carried weight. The sister blinked, stunned. Then I stepped in, keeping my voice firm. "This is my house, my decision, and my daughter. You are no longer welcome here, except to help pack." The message was clear. The era where I was everyone's doormat was over. As she reacted desperately, I realized that everything I had done to protect myself, all the financial transfers, the carefully prepared documentation, the years of letting them believe they held the power, had finally paid off. My wife's hands were tied. Fighting it in court would not get her far. Every document, every account, every business asset had been legally transferred to Mia's name over the years. She was not just my daughter. She was the executor of my freedom, and no one could touch it. My wife tried one last time before leaving. "You are evil," she said heartlessly. "You planned this like a snake." I did not flinch. I just looked her in the eyes and said, "I planned it like a man who finally learned not to beg for respect." That night, Mia found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a transcript of a voicemail from my stepdaughter. It said, "I did not mean what I said. I was just angry. Please, talk to Mom. She cries every night. We need to come home." I read it once, then again. I handed it back to Mia and said, "She is not sorry. She is just uncomfortable." And Mia nodded. Let her feel it. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope still in front of me. The transcript was carefully folded as if that made her words softer, easier to digest. But I saw it for what it was. A desperate attempt to return to comfort, not a real apology. There was no admission of fault or acknowledgement of what had been said or done. Just a vague plea to reverse the consequences. "Please, talk to Mom. She cries every night. No, we are sorry. No, we were wrong." Just a reminder of their discomfort, of what they had lost. I did not touch the paper again. It sat there like a receipt for a transaction I no longer wanted to be a part of. Mia came downstairs quietly. Her bare feet echoed softly on the wood floors. She saw the envelope, saw my expression, and did not ask questions. That was her style. She never forced me to explain the obvious. She understood silence better than most adults twice her age. She sat across from me with her tea, watched me for a moment, and said, "You know she is not crying for you. She is crying for what she lost access to." Her voice was steady, not cruel. She did not want to stoke my anger, just anchor me in the truth. I nodded. "Yes, I know, but it is still shocking to see it so clearly. 14 years and not a single line about how she hurt me, just how she feels now that I finally set boundaries." It was hard not to think about all the little ways I had made room for them in my life. When we got married, I was just building my business, a small IT consultancy, long hours, unpredictable clients, a modest salary at first. But I made sure there was never a lack of light, food in the fridge, that every birthday and holiday mattered. My wife did not work. She said she wanted to be there for her daughter. I respected that. I carried the financial weight without complaining. I did not want to be rich. I just wanted to give them a stable life. And for a while, I thought that was enough, until stability became an expectation, until gratitude became a right, until I realized she did not want me, but what I could do for her. I looked at Mia, still sipping her tea, and for a moment, I saw her as the culmination of all the silent sacrifices I had made in secret. I had sent money to her mother for years, without a court order, without a paternity test, just quiet checks and trust. We agreed not to complicate her upbringing, not to bring her into my marriage until the time was right. I did not know if that time would ever come, but I prepared anyway. savings for her education, stocks in her name, until I opened a trust and put the house in it. Silently, discreetly, I told no one. I was not preparing for a war. At the time, I was just preparing for everything. My lawyer, MS. Rachel Bennett, had once asked me, "Why do you not just protect yourself with a prenup?" I shrugged. Back then, I believed love would be enough. She did not laugh, but she did not need to. Her silence said it all. I did not know then what I know now, that love without respect is just manipulation with better packaging. And I had lived in that packaging for over a decade without knowing how hollow it was until it broke. Now, as my wife's threats turned into legal motions, I gave thanks for every boring afternoon spent in my lawyer's office moving assets, signing documents, learning how to disappear financially while remaining physically present. Mia was not just the heir to my estate. She was the fortress protecting me from the storm I had always suspected was possible. The first letter from my wife's lawyer arrived that afternoon. Dramatic. It accused me of financial abandonment, emotional cruelty, and hidden manipulation of assets. Mia raised an eyebrow and said, "A lot of fancy words for someone who yesterday thought you did not matter." I smiled. Yes, suddenly I matter again. I called MS. Rachel Bennett and forwarded her the letter. She was not worried. She is bluffing. Everything is in order. Let them go to trial. Judges do not like it when you treat a stepfather like a wallet and cry when it closes. But it did not end there. That night, my wife tried another tactic. She called me directly. Her voice was soft, honeyed, like in the early years when she wanted something without explicitly asking. "Can we talk, just you and me?" I paused and replied, "We are talking right now." There was silence for a second before she tried again. I made a mistake. I should not have said what I said at the school. She was upset. Teenagers say stupid things. I could hear her pacing back and forth. "We did not mean it." "No," I said, clenching my jaw. "You meant it enough to scream it at me in public with pride." Her tone then changed, like a mask slipping. "Fine, but do not punish us for one bad day." I smiled bitterly. One bad day does not erase 14 years where I was there. You erased me in one sentence. I am just giving you what you asked for. The next morning, Mia and I went to the bank to finalize a few transfers, just to secure everything. The manager was polite but visibly surprised when I asked him to remove my name as the primary account holder and leave me only as a secondary advisor. Mia signed every document with a serenity I did not expect from a 17-year-old. "Do you trust me that much?" she asked afterward, almost hesitant. I looked her straight in the eyes. "I have always trusted you. I just was not always allowed to show it." That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, Mia opened the door and found my stepdaughter there, mascara running, an oversized sweater, and a travel bag in her hand. "Mom does not know I am here," she whispered. "I just want to talk to him." Mia looked at me over her shoulder. I was frozen at the top of the stairs. For the first time since this all started, I did not know what I was supposed to say. I had not seen her up close since that night in the school hallway when she told me I was not her real dad. But here she was now at my door, wearing the same sweater I had bought her last Christmas, looking nothing like the girl who had delivered those words with the absolute conviction of someone who knew I would never leave. Her bag hung from one shoulder. Her makeup was smudged as if she had been crying for hours, and for the first time since the beginning, she did not look angry. She looked scared, vulnerable like a child. But I did not move. I stayed at the top, gripping the railing as if it were the only thing keeping me from saying something I would later regret. Mia looked at both of us hesitantly, waiting for me to decide what this moment was going to mean. She was the first to approach. "I know I messed everything up," she started in a trembling voice, as if she had not rehearsed what she was going to say. I did not mean what I said. I was just angry. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the fear in her eyes was more than the possibility of losing access to her comfort. But a part of me, the part that had stayed in the cold auditorium hallway with a bouquet of lilies I never got to give her, knew the truth. "Angry people say a lot of things," I replied in a lower voice than expected. "But they do not say things that deep unless they have already thought them." She looked down at her shoes. "I do not know why I said it. I was upset that you came. I did not think you would understand." I let out a soft laugh, incredulous. "You are right. I do not understand how a child I raised as my own can make me feel like an intruder." Mia took a step back, arms crossed. and I could tell she was listening to every word. This was not just about her half-sister. It was about whether I was going to uphold the boundary I claimed to defend. Mom does not know I am here, she repeated more softly. She does not want me to talk to you. She thinks you two are manipulating me. I scoffed. She raised you to think I was disposable, and now that I finally agree, suddenly I am dangerous. I took a deep breath and walked down the stairs slowly, stopping a few feet away from her. So what exactly do you want? She hesitated. To talk, maybe stay here a while. I just need space. Silence filled the room again. Letting her stay felt like betraying the version of me that had finally stood up, that had finally drawn a line in the sand and said stop. But rejecting her felt colder, crueler, maybe even vindictive. I saw the conflict etched on Mia's face. She was not just waiting for my answer. She was watching me weigh it all, and that was when she said something I did not expect. Let her stay, Mia said. For a while, but not as your daughter, as a guest. A guest does not have the same privileges as family. I looked at her, then looked at the girl I used to tuck in every night. Do you accept those terms? I asked. She nodded slowly. Yes, I just do not want to be with Mom right now. She is not who I thought she was either. So, we gave her the guest room, the one with thin walls and scratchy sheets, the one we had never updated during the renovations, with no comforts, no fully stocked minibar like the one she had in her room. Just a basic bed, a lamp, and a folded towel. That night, the silence in the house took on a different texture. It was not heavy or angry. It was tense, as if everyone was waiting for someone else to say the next important thing. I stayed downstairs while Mia watched a movie in her room. My stepdaughter did not come out, and I did not go check on her. That version of me no longer existed. In the middle of the night, I heard soft, hesitant footsteps. I thought it was Mia, but it was her. She stood in the doorway of the living room, hugging herself as if she was not sure she belonged there. I cannot sleep, she murmured. I nodded toward the couch. It still opens up. She sat on the armrest for a moment in silence. Then she said, Why didn't you tell me you had another daughter? The question hit me like a hook to the ribs. Because I did not want to complicate your life, I replied. Because I never thought you would question whether you were my daughter. Her lips parted, but no words came out, and for once, I let the silence speak louder than either of us. The next morning, everything was awkward, like three strangers pretending to speak the same language. She avoided Mia's gaze, and Mia did nothing to make her feel comfortable. I did not pressure either of them. That was no longer my role. My stepdaughter offered to make breakfast, maybe an attempt to show she was making an effort, but I declined politely. You are a guest, I reminded her. Guests do not cook. She sat in silence, understanding the weight of that word in this house. Now, it was no longer just a label, it was a boundary. A reminder that some bridges, once burned, should not be rebuilt. On the third day, I found her on the patio, sitting on the old swing I never had the heart to take down. She used to beg me to push her higher, and now she barely swayed back and forth, lost in thought. I ruined everything, didn't I? She asked. I approached slowly, without sitting, staying behind her. Yes, I said honestly. Yes. She sniffled and wiped her face with her sleeve. It is just that I thought you would always be there. I looked at the horizon. That is the problem. People believe loyalty is unconditional, but it is not. Loyalty has limits, especially when it is never reciprocated. That night, I received an email from my lawyer. Subject: Request for emergency hearing. My wife had filed for spousal support and in order to freeze my assets, alleging I had transferred everything to avoid my responsibilities. I stared at the screen, my heart calm, but my jaw clenched. They were trying to force their way back in, but it was already too late. Everything was already out of their reach. I sat at my desk staring at the screen, the subject line glowing like a threat. Emergency hearing requested. I did not open the file right away. I just stared at it, thinking about how predictable it all was. First the insults, then the manipulation, and now the legal attack. She thought I would panic, that it would scare me enough to come back to the table and negotiate what I had so carefully protected. What she did not know was that I had prepared for this day long before she could imagine it. The assets were already transferred, the trusts bulletproof, the paper trail clean. But still, the weight of being dragged into a courtroom by the woman I had once promised to love was heavier than expected. It was not fear, it was disappointment. the kind that sticks to your ribs like regret. Mia walked in without knocking, holding a bowl of cereal and a mug of coffee, as if she were heading to a college class and not into the middle of an emotional war. She did not ask permission to read over my shoulder. She just leaned against the wall, chewing, watching the screen. "Did you know this was coming?" she said after a moment. "I knew," I replied. "It does not make it any less exhausting." She nodded. She set her bowl on the desk. "Are you going to fight or ignore it?" I exhaled. "Neither. I am going to show up, and she will realize she has nothing to stand on." Sometimes silence in court is louder than anything written. Mia barely smiled. "Then we dress in black and sit in the front row." I let out a small laugh. "You are not going to court." "Why not?" she asked, almost offended. "Because it is not your war," I said. But the truth was that now it was her war too. She had made her a stakeholder the moment they found out she existed. The moment she realized that the name on every deed, every investment, every business share was hers. Suddenly, she was the villain in their story. A girl who had stolen her security, who had manipulated her way into a life that, according to her, did not belong to her. I knew the accusations would come. I just did not expect it to hurt so much. That night, my stepdaughter came to me with her phone in hand. "Mom will not stop texting me," she said. "She says Mia brainwashed you, that she manipulated you to push us away." I took the phone and read the wall of messages, long, frantic texts full of absurd claims and passive-aggressive jabs. "That girl turned him against us," one read. "She is manipulative like her mother. You will see, she is using him." I handed the phone back to her without saying anything. My stepdaughter looked at me with something that looked like shame in her eyes. "It is not true," she murmured. "Mia has been respectful to me. She does not even talk to me unless I start the conversation." I nodded. "I know." She hesitated. "Do you think Mom is really going to lose in court?" I looked at her, seeing the fear behind the question. "Your mom already lost," I replied. The moment she treated me like I was replaceable. There was no venom in my voice, just finality. And I could see how she trembled under the weight of that truth. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. My lawyer, Ms. Rachel Bennett, called to go over the formalities. Her voice was as calm as ever. "She is requesting emergency spousal support, alleging you transferred assets in bad faith to avoid your obligations." I smiled wryly. "Let them allege whatever they want. Every transfer was made 2 years ago. We even filed the corresponding tax returns." Ms. Rachel Bennett paused. "I must say, you planned this very well." I laughed humorlessly. I did not plan it out of spite. I planned it because I stopped trusting the people closest to me a long time ago. She understood. She always had. She had seen too many men dragged into court by women who believed marriage meant a permanent entitlement to everything. Mia remained quiet that afternoon. We sat on the back patio, both having tea, while the sunset painted the sky in orange and gold stripes. "Do you ever think about leaving it all behind?" she asked suddenly. "The house, the lawsuit, just starting over from scratch." I looked at her for a long time before answering. "Every day? But I have learned something these past few weeks. Leaving is not always strength. Sometimes staying, not giving them back the power they abused, is stronger." She nodded slowly. "I understand." Then she looked down at her hands. "Can I tell you something without you getting mad?" I leaned forward a bit. "Of course." She hesitated for a second. "I think she is afraid of you now. Not because of the money, but because you finally stopped loving her." That sentence stayed with me long after we went back inside the house. I did not sleep much that night. I kept thinking about what it meant to stop loving someone. Not out of rage, but out of pure exhaustion. You spend years giving someone the benefit of the doubt, and one day, you realize there is nothing left to give. It is not hate, it is not resentment, it is silence. And silence is the loudest goodbye there is. I thought I would cry more. I thought I would feel empty, but mostly I felt clean, like someone finally setting down a weight they had carried for too long. 2 days before the hearing, I received a voicemail on my old number. The one I hardly use anymore. The one my wife must have forgotten I no longer used. It was from her. The message was 3 minutes long and started in tears. "I do not know what happened to us," she said in a broken voice. "I thought we were building a life. I thought we were in this together. I know I said horrible things. I know I allowed our daughter to disrespect you, but I did not think you would really leave. I did not think you would turn into this version of yourself. Cold, distant. Then her tone shifted. But maybe I never really knew you. Maybe you were always planning to escape. Maybe you never loved us the way we loved what you gave us. I listened to it twice, then a third time, and by the end, I was not angry. I was numb because every word confirmed what I already knew. She did not miss me. She missed the control, and I had finally taken it away from her. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. My stepdaughter had packed her bags. It said, "I am going back to Mom. I thought I could fix this, but I cannot. I do not belong here. I hope one day you will forgive me. I know you were a good dad." I stood there for a long time reading those last 6 words over and over. You were a good dad. Past tense. That was when I knew she was not coming back, and that I did not need her to. I read her note 3 times before leaving it exactly where she had placed it. The handwriting was familiar, round, and slightly slanted as if she was always rushing when she wrote. But this time, it carried a finality I had never seen before. I know you were a good dad. That sentence stuck with me, heavier than I imagined. Not you are, you were. Past tense. The kind of sentence you use when someone has died or disappeared from your life. And maybe, in her eyes, that was the case. Maybe the version of me that stayed awake until she got home, that waited outside her school events with flowers in hand, unconditionally, died the day she opened her mouth and cut me in half with that sentence in the hallway. You are not my real dad. No, I was not. But I had been her father in everything that mattered until she decided it no longer mattered. On the morning of the hearing, I put on my black suit, the one I usually save for weddings or funerals. It was fitting. This was not just a trial or paperwork. It was the funeral of a role I had worn for almost 15 years. Mia stood by my side in the hallway, wearing navy blue pants and a light jacket. "Are you sure you do not want me to come?" she asked again. I shook my head. "It is not your battle." She looked at me, arms crossed, sharp. "It kind of is. They made me the villain as soon as they found out I existed." I softened. "You are not the villain. You are the reason I made it out of all this." She barely smiled and then hugged me. "Win or lose, you have already taken your power back." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Intimate, as if every word would hit harder than in a large space. My wife was on the other side, sitting with her lawyer, whispering in his ear like a coach before a game. She did not look at me once, and neither did I, not out of spite, but because I no longer owed her my attention. The judge arrived, an older man with tired eyes like someone who has seen too many families burn in this very room. The session started quickly. My wife's lawyer presented her claims, that I had suddenly transferred all assets into a third-party name to evade my marital obligations, that I had demonstrated irrational cruelty by evicting them, that my conduct had been calculating and destabilizing. I did not flinch. I let them paint me as the villain because I had the truth and the paper trail to prove it. When it was our turn, Ms. Rachel Bennett stood up with a quiet confidence I had always admired. "Your Honor," she began. "The transfers in question were made over 24 months ago, all documented, all disclosed. My client, anticipating long-term investment goals and future contingencies, placed his estate into a trust in his biological daughter's name as part of his financial planning. Not out of deception. It is within his rights. There were no hidden assets or deceit, and there is no legal basis for emergency relief." The judge listened, nodded occasionally, and turned the pages of the file we had provided. My wife's lawyer tried to object, alleging bad faith, but it was obvious this was not a case of abandonment. It was a case of someone who had finally said no after years of being used. The verdict did not take long. The judge denied the motion for emergency support. He concluded that the transfers were legitimate and no order would be issued. "This court," he said, "cannot impose financial support in a marriage where mutual respect and contribution have clearly deteriorated. You may proceed with the divorce, but as of today, your motion is dismissed." And just like that, it was over. No yelling, no tears, just a cold, silent end to a relationship I had once believed was eternal. I stood up, thanked the judge, and walked out without looking back. I did not need to see her reaction. I had already seen everything I needed the day she chose silence when her daughter humiliated me. Mia was waiting for me in the hall, checking her phone. Seeing me walk in, she closed it and stood up. I gave her a small smile. They lost. She did not celebrate, did not gloat. She just nodded and sat back down. That was what I loved most about her. She did not need dramatic closure. She understood that true healing was silent, slow, sometimes awkward. We had dinner together that night, just the two of us. A simple meal of grilled chicken, rice, and steamed vegetables. Nothing fancy, but it was the most peaceful meal I had had in years. No tension, no forced conversation, just comfort, just peace. Later, I went into the guest room where my stepdaughter had stayed. It was empty again. The bed was made, her scent barely noticeable in the air. I sat on the edge of the mattress and reread her note again. I thought I could fix this, but I cannot. I believed her. She had probably come back thinking a few tears and a few days of good behavior would erase everything. But healing does not happen on someone else's emotional timeline. Forgiveness is not guaranteed, especially when it comes from someone who has been trampled on for long enough. I was not angry with her, or even resentful. I simply did not see her the same way anymore. The bond had broken, not in a moment of rage, but in thousands of small moments of silent disrespect. And when she finally understood, it was already too late. That night, I stood by the front door, looking at the shiny new lock Mia and I had installed just a few weeks ago. So much had changed behind this door, and yet the world outside kept turning as if nothing had happened. Maybe that was the hardest part, knowing that the world does not stop for your broken heart, that life goes on, even when your idea of family falls apart. But I also understood something else. That door no longer protected a house full of tension and resentment. It protected peace, it protected me, and I was not going to let anyone cross it again unless they brought respect in their hands. I used to think being a father meant always showing up, no matter what. Now I know it means knowing when to stop showing up for those who no longer see your worth. I gave everything to a family that then told me I did not belong. So, I left, I closed the door, and I went back to the only person who never stopped believing in me, my daughter. Not the one who shared my last name, but the one who shared my values. I was not her real dad, but now, finally, I am my own. Comment. Hey, friends, this one really stayed with me. I realized how important it is to protect your own self-worth without feeling guilty about it. Setting clear boundaries is not about pushing people away. It's about choosing the kind of love and respect you truly deserve. I've learned that real kindness includes being kind to yourself first. When you finally choose peace over constant pain, healing begins in the quietest way. Taking responsibility for your happiness is one of the bravest steps you can ever take. I hope you pause for a second today and ask yourself if the relationships around you lift you up or slowly wear you down. You deserve people who see your value without making you prove it every day. Choosing calm doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're finally strong enough to guard your heart. I'm right here cheering for every one of you who decides to build a life that feels like home again. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.